Hey guys, and welcome to another headphone discussion by AudioHead. My name is Johan, and today I would like to make a quick video tutorial about the important aspects to know and consider when buying a pair of headphones for professional use. That refers to recording, monitoring, mixing, mastering, all those kind of things. Right, so the 5 important topics that I would like to cover is the frequency response curve of the headphones, the ear coupling, the acoustic design, the transducer type, and the impedance of the headphone. Right, so the first topic, the frequency response curve. That refers to how the headphone responds to a different range of frequencies. Now, especially while mixing and mastering, you want something that is as neutral and flat as possible, but as you may know, that this is completely impossible to achieve with any speaker or headphone design because of resonances of the driver and the housing and the room and all sorts of things. So it's impossible to ever achieve a flat response, but we want to get as close as possible. So when you're buying headphones for professional use, it's important to know what that model's frequency response curve looks like, and you choose something that is as neutral as possible. There are a bunch of great headphones on the market that are really fun to listen to, and they're great for listening to music, but they're not very good, not well suited for professional use for editing. And the reason is because there's an airplane. The reason is because their tone is colored slightly. They may have a slight bass bump or a treble bump or some dip somewhere, and that affects the sound that you hear. So I want to show you some graphs. First off, let's look at the frequency response curve of the Beats Studio 3. You can see that it varies widely over the range. In the very low bass range, it has a dip and then it climbs over, and around the mid-range there's a significant bump and then it evens out again. And also around the 4 kilohertz range there's a very deep dip. So that is not quite neutral, and it may affect the way that you mix and master and what the end product sounds like. Now let's compare that to the graph of the Audio-Technica ATH-M50. That's this pair right here. ATH-M50s, very, very popular. Very popular, especially for monitoring and while recording. I'll talk about some other aspects of that later. But let's look at the graph of that. So over there you can see that it's much more flat. It still has its ups and downs, but it's closer to the neutral line. And that's what you want to achieve. Right, so let's look at another example. Over here you can see a Skullcandy push. That graph, you can see much of the bass range has almost a 3 to 5 decibel lift. Across much of the bass, right into the mid-range, and then it has a sudden dip from about 800 hertz onward, and then it flattens out again. You can also see in the very high frequencies a strong dip. That's really going to influence a lot of things when mixing and mastering. Let's compare that to a Beyerdynamic DT 770. You can see that this one, almost right through to the 2 kilohertz range, is very, very neutral. And then above that it goes up and down a bit. All headphones will fluctuate quite a bit above around 2 kilohertz. That's quite normal. But yeah, the important thing is really, I think, the lower end and the mid-range. It's very important that is neutral. That's where most of the instruments lie. That's where most of vocals lie. You want that to be as neutral as possible. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is the ear coupling. So that refers to the way that the headphones fit on your ear or inside your ear. It's not a biggie, but it's more of a practical thing. So it's important to know, depends on what you're going to use it for. So first off, we get in-ears. That's the ones you get with your cell phone. I'm not going to talk about that too much. Then something that's very similar to that is in-ear monitors. I don't have a pair to show you, but they also have earbuds that fit inside the ear, but they are sculpted to fit properly in the ear and not fall off easily, because they're mostly used by musicians on stage or in the studio. And they have a very good acoustic seal, so you don't get any noises from outside. And that's important when you want a personalized mix while recording or while performing on stage. So that's mostly what they are used for by musicians. The next ear coupling that you get would be on-ear. If we kind of move from inside the ear outward, you get on-ear design. They are usually a slightly smaller design, so it's a bit more practical if you're doing monitoring outside. You don't want too bulky things. They also seal quite well, but the problem with that is they may become uncomfortable after long use. So I wouldn't recommend that for mixing and mastering. Maybe for recording and monitoring, or if you're operating a camera, that's a good option to go for, because they're smaller and more practical. Also, because of the way that they affect the acoustics, they won't be good for mixing and mastering. We'll talk about that a bit later. But on ears also you get some like these Pioneer. They're kind of a hybrid actually. For some people they might actually fit around the ear. For me they go like on my ear. These are made for DJing. So also to be kind of small and compatible and portable. Right, so that's on ear. Then you also get around ear. They fit over your ears. And those are super comfortable and great for use in mixing and mastering, because you can wear them for long periods of time. The other important thing is because they go around the ear, there's more space, and often those are open back designs. We'll talk about that just now. They give more space in the music and they're more realistic. They sound more like speakers, and that's what you want when you're mixing and mastering. Yeah, great headphones that I spoke about earlier, the Beyerdynamic DT 770 Pro. These are over-ear designs. You can see that they're slightly larger. They have very large ear cups and they fit around your ears. Right, super comfortable, and you can use them for long periods of time. Right, so I want to show you something important that has to do with a sound stage. Sound stage is how you perceive the band or the orchestra or the performers in front of you, how you perceive them and how wide that is and how realistic it sounds. Our ears are made in a way to affect the sound that we hear. That's how we can determine whether a sound is coming from the back, from behind, or from the side, or from in front of us. The shape of our ears tune different frequencies, and we can calculate the position of sounds. So when we're using in-ear buds, like in-ear monitors or something that goes inside the ear, that whole function is cancelled out. And that may mean that the sound stage is not accurate at all. So I want to show you some graphs that show you the pinna-related transfer function of different headphones. Now the pinna is this part of your ear. The outer part of your ear is called the pinna. And that effect that it has on the acoustics of sound we hear is called the pinna-related transfer function. So let's have a look at these graphs. You'll see here we have one of the Apple EarPods. Nothing against it. They are a great product, but they're not made for this type of professional use, and that's what I wanted to show you. So look at the graph. You can see the dotted line is the goal. That's where we want to be. That's basically the reference. If you look at the dark blue line, that's where this headphone measures. So you can see it's way off. It's like in the middle, straight line, almost straight through. That means that with Apple EarPods or anything basically that goes inside your ear, you won't have any reference of soundstage or any accurate reference of soundstage. So it's going to be very difficult to place instruments and to do the panning correctly. Yeah, it's going to be really a nightmare and it won't sound good. To get a more realistic sound, you need something that fit over your ears. To include the pinna-related transfer function. Now that also depends on the design of the headphone, how it is involved. You know, the size of the ear cups and the placement of the drivers inside and all those kind of things. But let's look at a graph of something that fits over your ear. So here I'm looking at the Beyerdynamic DT 990. And you can see that it follows the dotted line more closely. You'll never be able to get it exactly on that. The dotted line is a reference for when we're listening to something naturally without any headphones. That's the way that most of our ears on average will affect the sound. So with this Beyerdynamic DT 990, you can see that it more closely follows that curve, and that is desirable. It will give you a more accurate sound stage. So the next thing that I'd like to talk about is the acoustic principle or the acoustic design of the headphones. We get three different types of headphones when looking at on-ear or over-ear headphones. Those include closed back, semi-open back, and open back headphones. So I've got some to show you here. Actually, Beyerdynamic has a range that include all three of those. So you have the DT-770 Pro. That is a closed back. You can see here that the back of it is actually completely closed. We'll talk about the aspects of it just now, and then you get the DT-880, which is this one right here. This is a semi-open back, and then you have the 990, which is an open back, and you can see by the grill as well, this is open on the back of the headphone. Right, so how that affects the sound, the closed back seals in sound from inside and outside. So you are much less likely to get interferences from outside, things that bother you. Whereas, contrary to that, the open back is completely open, so sound can go in and out. All right, so how does that affect the practical aspects of the headphone? The closed back would be more suitable for recording or monitoring when you may be in a noisy environment and you don't want any sounds from outside to be disturbing you. If you're recording something and you hear a noise in the recording, you want to know that that is in the recording and that it wasn't something in the booth or, you know, something else. So you want to know that it's from the recording, and for that case, you would use a closed back. Also, when monitoring in a noisy environment, you want to be focusing. Right. Also, when using headphones in a radio booth, let's say we're doing an interview with 5 people and all of them are using headphones, we also want closed back, because with an open back or semi-open, the sound is going to leak out. So the microphones around the studio will pick up the sound from the headphones as well, and you'll be getting some phasing issues. So in that case, really good option to go for a closed back so the sound is sealed in. But the problem with the closed back is when mixing and mastering, you're getting a slightly colored sound. Because of the closed back, there's more pressure on the drivers and they tend to have a slight bump in bass response. So when mixing and mastering, we're looking for something like a semi-open or an open back to get more space, to have a wider sound stage, to have better stereo imaging, and open backs acoustically resemble speakers more closely, and that's what we're aiming for. So let's look at some graphs here. So over here we have the graph of a Beyerdynamic DT-770 again. You can see that it's in the in the bass region, straight through the mid-range. It's very neutral on the line. Now let's look at the DT990, which is the open back. Over here you can see that there's a slight dip in the bass range, just around 80 Hertz. It kind of flattens out. That is more realistic and what speakers would sound like, unless you're in a very small room with a bass bias. That's gonna boost the bass a bit, but normally this is what it will sound like, and this is what you're aiming for when mixing and mastering. Another pair of really great closed back headphones for monitoring, they've been the world's favorite for a long time, the Audio-Technica ATH-M50x. These are really, really great, very flat, neutral response. They have very good ambient noise attenuation, so you don't get a lot of sounds from outside. Really great pair. Something just a little bit less expensive. They're not that expensive, but a little bit less expensive is also the ATH-M40x. Very similar design. Honestly, I can't hear a lot of difference between the two. I'd say the ATH-M40s are a bit more laid back. M50s maybe a little more detailed, but considering what they are made for recording and monitoring, you know, it's the acoustic characteristics of it isn't that important yet. That becomes more important when you're mixing and mastering, you know, for the final product, then you want something like that. But what they're made for, they really do the job very well. So talking about closed back and open back, I want to also show you some graphs on the pinner-related transfer function, a comparison between closed back and open back. So let's look at a graph of the DT770 again. You'll see that there's kind of a spike that crosses the dotted line right before 1 kilohertz, let's say around 800 hertz. But it's much better than in-ears, but you can see how the fact that it's a closed back affects the sound stage. Now let's look at the DT990. You'll see that it more closely follows the line, and that's because it's an open back. So again, that makes the open back more suitable for mixing and mastering. Next, I want to quickly talk about the driver design of different headphones. So we get mostly 3 different driver designs. Most headphones use a dynamic driver. It's a normal cone with a voice coil attached to it inside a magnet like any other speaker. All of these headphones are dynamic headphones. Then you also get planar magnetic drivers. Those are a very thin membrane with an electric circuit on it, fitted into a strong magnetic field between 2 very strong magnets that causes that membrane to vibrate. And then we get electrostatics. Those are 2 very thin membranes that are both charged statically and they vibrate in relation to each other. So how that differs or how that affects the sound is because the planar magnetic and the electrostatics use very thin membranes. They're very, very light, very low inertia, which means that they can respond much quicker, and things like transients, you know, kick drums, bass guitar, double bass, if you're doing jazz, you know, rhythmic sections, those are going to be more accurate, and you'll be able to hear that better. It's going to be more detailed, and the drivers are fast, quick response, and the damping is really good, so they don't resonate as easily because they're not heavy. In dynamic drivers, you get those artifacts, right? So it's important to know if you really want like great sound, planar magnetic or electrostatics will give you that, but they are very, very expensive. I don't have something here to show you now. Odyssey, for example, really great planar magnetic headphones used in professional studios across the world. Great sound. Electrostatics let's look at a picture of a pair of electrostatics. This pair of Sonomas, very, very expensive. They go for about 95,000 Rand. And lastly, I'd like to talk about the impedance of the headphone. The impedance is the resistance that the headphone, in a way, it's the resistance that the headphone provides to the amplifier. This is also more of a practical thing. So if you're going to use the headphones on a camera while monitoring or on a portable recording system, usually or typically that amplifier wouldn't have a lot of power. And you want headphones with a low impedance so that it has less resistance and it can be derived more easily. If you're using them on a mixing desk or, with a strong audio interface, that would typically have more power, and you would want to match that with a headphone with a higher impedance. A higher impedance will give you a better sound. It's technical why, but just know this, a higher impedance will give you a slightly better sound, but you need more power to drive it. So keep that in mind. We can also look at the Beyerdynamics again, the DT-770s. You get that in 3 different models. So you get it in a 32 ohm, you get it in an 80 ohm, and you get it in a 250 ohm. So if I'm going to use this for portable recording, then I'm getting the 32 ohm. If I'm going to use it on a mixing desk, I'll get the 250 ohm. If you're going to use it in a hybrid situation, maybe then go for the 80 ohm. Right? Not all headphones have the same impedance. They vary. Low would be considered something around 32, 30, 32. And then mid-range, you're looking at about 50 to 100. And then the higher impedances, you're looking up to about 250. Some headphones even have an impedance of up to 600 ohm. But those are specialized for hi-fi use. So guys with dedicated headphone amps, it's more of an audiophile thing. Generally in professional use, studio use, you would find them ranging around 250 on the high end. So look at that when you're buying headphones too. I want to quickly discuss just a couple great things here. So I've talked about the Beyerdynamics and the fact that they have a closed back, open back, semi-open. I've mentioned the Audio-Technicas ATH-M50, great headphone for monitoring and recording. The M40s also beautiful. Yeah, one thing I like about these, they have a removable cable, so you can fit a shorter cable or a longer cable. Yeah, really great design. Over here I have a Pioneer HDJ X7. You get X5, X7, X10. These are made for DJing and electronic music production. Very good fit, very proper design. This is all metal. So they would really handle some tough work. And you can see also in the design, they're made to swivel and all kinds of ways that you can configure them the way you like it. Really great pair. On this side, an Audio-Technica reference headphone. This is a completely open back. I don't know if you can see, but you can see the driver from the outside. This is completely open. If I have this on my ears, it's like I don't have anything on my head. I can hear everything just as well. Sound will leak from this like crazy. But what these are used for is it's a pair of reference headphones for mixing and mastering as well, same as the Beyerdynamic DT990s. Great pair of headphones. Yeah, they sound wonderful. They sound very neutral. Yeah. Then on this side I have a Sennheiser HD599. They also have a removable cable, which is great. You can get a short one or a long one. HD599, this is an open back headphone, so also great for mixing and mastering. They have a slightly more toned down sound compared to the Beyerdynamics, more neutral and not as bright or detailed, but a great product. It depends on preference as well. Something that I didn't talk about earlier when talking about the frequency response, there's a saying that goes, you may know this, there's a saying that goes, if you can't take the room out of your mix, then you shouldn't take your mix out of the room. And what that means, you should know the studio monitors that you use, or the way that your room sounds, or the way that your headphones sound. You need to know all the characteristics of the product to know how that will affect your mix and your mastering. Otherwise, yeah, you may end up with a product that won't sound good on any other system. So it's important to know the characteristics of what you're going to use. Over here we have the Sennheiser as well, HD569. It's, as you can see, exactly the same design as the 599, but this is a closed back. So we have an open back and a closed back of the same design. So this is more suited toward the recording and monitoring use. Great pair of headphones. They're super comfortable. Very soft ear pads. Yeah, really, really comfortable. Also a great pair to look at. Right, so that was basically the 5 important aspects to consider and know about when buying headphones for professional use. I hope that you learned a lot. If you need any other information or have any questions about any of these products, you can check out our website at audiohead.co.za, or you can find our contact page, send me a message. I'll be glad to help. Hopefully we can do some more videos like this. I'll come to show you some things. If you wish, let me know. We can do a demo and you can find what you need that's perfect for you. Right, take care and I'll see you again.